Dr. Jose Ramon G. Albert is a senior research fellow at the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, and he is the former Secretary General of the Philippine Statistics Authority. As a statistician by training, he has spent decades strengthening the country's data systems and advancing evidence based policy making. He has been instrumental in shaping how the Philippines measures poverty, inequality, and human development, ensuring that policy decisions are grounded in accurate and credible data. With a PhD in statistics from the State University of New York at Stony Brook, Dr. Albert brings a rigorous data driven lens to some of the country's most pressing development challenges. Dr.
Okay,
Jose
thanks,
Ramon.
Bobby. Good afternoon to everyone. What I'd like to give you this afternoon are some headline numbers about oil prices and their effects, and an examination in particular of which businesses are most exposed and by how much, just to help us think about what can be done moving forward. So this is spring. Actually, I would be ideas, but I was asked by a program that's funded by the Australian government. It's practically taken over the work of USAID. But this is on social protection, inclusion, and gender equality. So I call it Spring. No, I got a message a few weeks ago requesting me to do an examination of the impact on households. So my analysis draws on the use of the 2018 input-output table that's released by the Philippine Statistics Authority, which traces how every sector of the economy buys from and sells to every other sector. So we can think of it as some kind of an X-ray of the supply chain. The only thing is it's still 2018. So I myself wonder whether the economy might have changed a lot since from 2018 to today, but the PSA unfortunately has not yet released a new IO table, so we're stuck with whatever we have. So anyways, that said, we note that we've already been feeling all of these numbers. Of course, some of this might already start going down a little bit, but for the past few weeks, we've had diesel at over 100 pesos per liter, gasoline similarly somewhere near 100. And then worse is and together with that, we've also been having a depreciation of the peso, more than 60 to a dollar. And it's not just a single event, it's really a compound shock that we're feeling. The conflict in the Middle East that was started by the Orange Man uh, disrupted the passage of global oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and we know that 20% of all the global oil is actually passing through this strait. But and unfortunately, as a result, oil prices have really spiked globally, and together with that, the peso depreciation made everything even more expensive for us, which is very reliant on our imports of all our fuel. Year to date, fuel prices have been up by about 75 to 126%, depending on the product. No? Um, so so we looked at these three scenarios that were given by the Asian Development Bank very recently, based on how long and how severe the conflict might turn out to be. Because right now we don't really know. It all depends on a daily basis. It's anybody's guess how things will turn out. But the current situation corresponds to what ADB calls a scenario number one, where you have about $100 per barrel of oil, and we are assuming that this will continue more or less until June, and it can trim growth of the GDP across Asia and the Pacific by about zero point 0.3 percentage points, and maybe again across Asia add zero point 0.6 percentage points to inflation. But of course, we might have a prolonged war under scenario number two, where you might double essentially that damage. And then scenario number three, which is the tail risk, oil reaching something like $145 per barrel and inflation jumping by more than 3 percentage points. And we will show you the results across all of these three scenarios. And then I'll give you briefly what are the results, maybe you might have heard about it because the media has been popularizing my study that I just released a few days ago on the impact on households. But anyways, this chart here shows specifically which industries are most wired into petroleum as a share of their total production costs. The higher the bar, the more directly the industry is exposed. So we see here that basic metals manufacturing is around 25%, roughly meaning that 1 peso out of every 4 pesos is spent producing that's spent on producing steel might come from petroleum. Air transport, also very near, 23%. Cement, 21%. Electricity, 17%. Land and water transport at 12 to 13%. Food and beverage manufacturing seems very low at 4%, but we will come back to why that sector still matters enormously in peso terms. Now, here is what the numbers mean in practice under the current scenario ADB S1. No? Basic metals face around 15% of cost increases, meaning steel producers are absorbing cost pressures of roughly that magnitude before any recovery from customers. Although you might be able to still make use of this from your margins. Air transport, 14.4%, cement, 11.8%, land transport, 9.8%, electricity generation, 9%. But if these conditions worsen to they prolong to ADB-S2 or even worse to scenario number 3, the worst case that we've handled here, basic metals and air transport might face cost pressures of about more than 30%. So for fixed price contracts in constructions or logistics, that difference is the profit margin. Now, here, let me just show you a little bit of the moderate and even low exposure sectors that are still facing real pressures. Fabricated metals like pipes, structural components, hardware up by 7% under the current scenario. Paper and packaging, 5.8%. Electronics manufacturing, 3.8%, which matters because it is our largest manufacturing sector by output. Food products, 1.9%. Modest in percentage terms, but food manufacturing is a 6.2 trillion peso sector. So at 1.9% cost, that increases translates to around 118 billion pesos in additional production costs. So that passes through the prices that you're paying at the shelf. Now, summing across all the 80 sectors in the IO, although there is another bigger IO, but I use only the 80 sectors, the total additional production cost burden on the Philippine economy under the current scenario is already 550 billion pesos, assuming things will continue up to June, equivalent to already about 2.58% of the country's GDP. But under a prolonged crisis, that rises to nearly double, 942 billion, and in the worst case, 1.3 trillion pesos, or over 6% of GDP. So these are not losses from lower output, but cost push pressures that squeeze our margins and may get passed on to consumers as inflation or both. Now, since Bobby asked me to give also some drilling down on some cases and in manufacturing, let me just give some 3 sectors that deserve special attention. Cement costs are up nearly, we estimate that they're going to be up by about 12% under the current scenario, threatening fixed price government infrastructure contracts across the Build Better More pipeline. So cost overruns in public works tend to cascade into the private construction supply chain as well. Transport is perhaps the most geographically important because with inter-island logistics at the heart of Philippine commerce, freight cost increases of 9 to 14% will raise the prices of goods in Mindanao, the Visayas, and Mimaropa disproportionately. And electricity is the amplifier. Every sector depends on it. A 9% rise in electricity generation costs under the current scenario would ripple into the power bills of industrial, commercial, and residential consumers in the country. Now, let me just briefly give you the impact of the house on the household sector that I mentioned, because you will be hearing more about businesses from my colleague Francis. Uh, but one finding that I've had examining how this drills down to households based on a micro simulation of the expenditures of families in one of the surveys of the Philippine Statistics Authority called the Family Income and Expenditure Survey, which was the most recent of which was still 2023, is perhaps a little bit directly relevant to businesses, consumers, and the workforce, so that you can understand also what's happening to your employees as well as to your customers. The shock is regressive. It hurts lower income groups much more than higher income groups, even though it hits everyone in the income distribution. Poor households lose a bigger share of their income in effective purchasing power. The wealthiest lose a much smaller share. And of course, because the wealthy have savings, they can easily draw from their savings to be able to spread out the losses, so to speak, in purchasing power. Now, the reason why the poor seem to be having the bigger brunt of the problem is that they're spending half of their budgets on food, and food supply chains are deeply fuel intensive. This means consumer demand at the lower end of the market will compress sharply unless there's some kind of policy intervention. And that's why I actually suggested to government, and it seems they are going to follow my suggestion. I'm very glad I've actually been invited to the palace twice to hear out some discussions. I'm glad to see that the government is really very serious, except that it has also a lot of fiscal constraints. Our household modeling shows that under the current scenario, we will have an estimated 1.34 million more Filipinos who will be joining the poverty line, all of them from low-income households just above the poverty threshold before the shock. And this is relevant again for businesses operating in mass market consumer segments or relying on low-wage workforce. As I mentioned, I suggested that government perhaps provide a new unconditional cash transfer, which tentatively I've called as SAPAT, or giving around 6,000 pesos per household, delivered through existing DSWD programs, 4Ps, social pensions, walang gutom, sustainable livelihood program, and also because we do have SSS and GSI as pensioners who may be getting very low pensions, let's say 3,000 pesos a month. So we need to be able to provide them some assistance to offset the purchasing power losses, especially at the bottom three deciles of income distribution. And roughly, our suggestions here, would be that overall, this could cost around 84 billion pesos. But nonetheless, this is money well spent, because this will be serving as a multiplier to invigorate economic activities. And as I already mentioned, government appears to have already accepted this suggestion in principle, though the details and mechanics are still being worked out. They will not follow all the things that I suggested here, but in principle, they will be providing new ayuda, no, but under a new brand name. All right, so just briefly, the immediate priorities given our results are that government would be that there might be some need for tariff relief on clinker and cement imports to protect the infrastructure pipeline, expedited transport surcharge review at LTFRB, and a coordinated ERC tariff review for electricity, aside from my suggested transfers on households at the lower part of the income distribution. Now, I would also point out that government has not been sitting on the job. In fact, they have been doing already some cash transfers for some of our drivers. As I understand, originally the DSWD tried to make its own list of drivers, and it was According to the official sources, it was supposed to be somewhere around 580 thousand drivers throughout the country. But when SecRex started going around and he discovered that there are shadow lists, the lists are actually not going to total 580,000, but four times that amount. It's 2.1 million drivers throughout the country, and I think it might even go a little bit higher than that. No, but that shows you lots of magic happening in government. But that's not the responsibility though of the SWD. Their responsibility is to provide the assistance, and they're already doing that. Unfortunately, there's some still quirks along the way. But anyways, for on the medium term, there could be MSME's working capital support might need to be provided some assistance, perhaps through DBP or Small Business Corporation. And I'm glad here that we have Bert, who might discuss a little bit more about the need for us to really take it seriously and go more on renewables, because we need to reduce really our the structural oil dependence that we've had, that makes us one of the most vulnerable countries across the entire world, because of this from this shock, no, in the first place. And then let me just close with that the business for me, that the bottom line for businesses is really very straightforward. Sectors that are very exposed would be steel, cement, transport, and energy. But some of you may be able to, as I said, still absorb some of the shocks, the costs. But the plan for this cost increases in the supply chains, if they were to persist at current levels or worsen, that means we will need to do extra interventions. But we will need to price your contracts accordingly and engage with government on perhaps some kind of relief measures that are already being concocted out on the table. But I also hope that many business groups that have been enjoying very big profits for many years, especially telcos and banks, and as far as the households are concerned, the very, very wealthy, should be start practicing much more responsibility to pay it forward. Banks in particular can decide to condone all personal or salary loans taken for the last 3 years even, because the banking industry has been profiting too much from a growing middle class in the last 5 years, with, I heard, the top 10 banks averaging a net income of 20 billion pesos. So surely these banks can forego at least 25% of the net incomes, which could collectively raise maybe even 100 billion from a 400 billion industry income. And this loan condonation would actually have tremendous ripple effects, as it would free up loan amortization that the middle class is suffering from, and instead allow a greater monthly purchasing power for the middle class, and that will also have effects for the entire economy. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Toots, Dr. Toots. It, it, this is still very concise, I know there's so many things in that presentation. We're very glad that you had an opportunity to present this to the palace. Kanina nga sinasabi ko kay Dr. Toots, at least the right people are hearing it, and we're seeing the right responses.